I'm Hala Gorani, sitting in for Christiane Amanpour. For weeks now, thousands of Ukrainians have braved the bitter cold to protest their government's rejection of an EU trade agreement in favor of keeping closer ties with Russia. But today, finally, a hint that Ukraine's President Viktor Yanukovych may be bowing to the pressure and reversing course. The EU's foreign policy chief, Catherine Ashton, talked to Mr. Yanukovych and said this to CNN just as she arrived back home in Brussels.
He indicated he still wishes to sign the association agreement with the European Union. From our perspective, we think that's good for this country.
The protests in Kiev's Independence Square are the largest the country has seen since the 2004 Orange Revolution. They turned violent overnight on Tuesday when riot police cracked down with chainsaws and even bulldozers in an attempt to push the protesters out. The riot police later withdrew, but the EU and the United States quickly condemned the actions, with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry going as far as calling the American reaction to all of this one of disgust. Ukraine has been caught in a tug of war between the West and Russia ever since independence. Both sides are jockeying for influence over the economically troubled country of 46 million. Russia's President Vladimir Putin hasn't said much publicly about the protests happening next door, but he briefly touched on the topic during the State of the Nation address today.
We know about all the events that are taking place in Kiev at the moment and all the political forces of the country. It is in the interest of the Ukrainian authorities to succeed. We need to work together in all these spheres. We are not obligating anyone to do anything. This is our wish, to work together.
How will Russia respond if Ukraine's president goes against Putin's wishes and signs that EU agreement? I asked Alexei Pushkov, head of the International Affairs Committee in the Russian parliament, when he joined me earlier from Moscow.
Well, Mr. Yanukovych has made different statements these last weeks, and he never actually rejected the possibility of signing a deal with the European Union, but he said on many occasions that he is not happy with the content of the deal. So what he meant when he said that he may sign this association deal with the European Union is not quite clear to me. Is he ready to sign the deal which has been proposed to Ukraine and which is, to my mind, not very appealing, and to the mind of Mr. Yanukovych neither, or he is ready to sign some kind of deal which can be reconsidered by the European Union and which may contain better conditions? This is not clear yet, and I will need some more information to make my judgment.
But if a deal is signed, that would not satisfy the Russian government, which wants Ukraine to sign a deal with it, a trade deal with its bloc. Is that the case?
Well, Russia is definitely interested to have a closer integration and economic relationship with Ukraine. This is true. But at the same time, the Russian president said on many occasions that he will respect the Ukrainian choice, that whatever Kiev decides to do will be respected by Russia, and we will definitely not complicate our relationship over this.
Because, of course, as you know, the criticism geared toward Russia is that Russia is simply bullying Ukraine into rejecting a European trade deal and trying to bully it into getting closer to the Russian side on this. What's your response to that?
I think this is a very biased approach. I think the European Union does bully Ukraine to accept the deal, which is definitely not very advantageous to Ukraine. Have you seen the deal? Have you read this deal? It offers 660 million euros to Ukraine, and that's it. In the times when Ukraine has a huge debt, it has to pay $2 billion for its gas debt to Russia. It has to live through a very hard winter. It has very small financial and gold reserves. And the EU offers a token package which is not of any interest to the Ukrainian government. And that's why Mr. Yanukovych has initially rejected it. And then all these demonstrations started with the participation of the European ministers of different countries of foreign affairs who were speaking on the Maidan, joining the protesters and so on. I would say this is taking Ukraine by the neck and trying to bring it forcefully into the paradise. So we don't agree with this reading.
So you're seeing the European Union essentially as strong-arming Ukraine?
Absolutely. If you go to Kiev today, Hala, and you look how many European representatives are there trying to influence the Ukrainian government, supporting the protesters, making statements, giving interviews, and then you compare them to the number of Russians who are there, you'll find that there are no Russian political personalities there trying to make Ukraine and make a choice which Russia would like it to make. You will see only foreign ministers and members of parliament, and by the way, Mrs. Victoria Nuland from the State Department saying to Ukraine what to do. And this is a very drastic difference in the Russian approach and in the Western approach.
Do they not have a right to protest against their government in a free society?
Actually, did I say anything against this? I say that they have the right to do this, but I don't think that they have the right to dictate to the whole Ukrainian nation what way to take.
Now, I have to say, if this EU deal is signed eventually, and it's possible that it will be, what would the Russian response be in that case, do you think?
The Russian response would be, as it was stated before, Russia will reconsider its trade terms with Ukraine, because there is not a single reason, if Ukraine has a free trade zone with the EU, to keep the present regime of taxes, customs regime with Ukraine. It will be a member of a group of countries which has a free trade agreement. Russia is not part of this group, and Russia will defend its market from the goods which may come from Ukraine. And I think Ukraine will lose a lot. And that's what we told the Ukrainians. And just we suggested them to make the calculus. What is better for them, to join the Free Trade Association with the EU or to have a most favored nation regime with Russia? It's up to them to decide.
But it does sound as though Ukraine would be punished for signing a deal with the European Union by Russia.
No, there is. It's not a punishment. You live in a market society. You understand very well that if you have a special agreement with a number of countries, a third country has to defend its market. And I have to tell you that, look at Serbia, look at Bulgaria, which is a member of the EU. These countries have lost much more from joining the association or the membership in the European Union. Their industry is destroyed. Their agriculture is almost non-existent. And they are still waiting for investments from the European Union, which are never coming. And I think Ukraine has to compare itself with these countries, not with Denmark and Norway or Sweden, which are well-to-do countries, but with countries of Southern Europe. And we have noticed that the association with the European Union does not really spell well for a number of Southern European countries with underdeveloped economies.
Will this resolve itself peacefully in Ukraine, do you think?
We hope it will, because we are not interested in this kind of civil confrontation in Ukraine. Ukraine is very close to us. 13 million citizens of Ukraine are Russians, and half of Ukraine, or even two-thirds of Ukraine, are Russian speakers, and we feel very close to this country, so we are definitely not interested to have a civil war or a civil confrontation there.
And do you think that the U.S. is concerning itself with something in Ukraine that it shouldn't be, making these statements about being disgusted, etc.? Do you think that this is just to kind of stir the pot? What is your feeling on that?
My feeling is that the United States are disgusted with the governments they don't like, and they are quite happy with the governments they like, even if these governments are killing people. The United States are not disgusted with the government of Saudi Arabia. The United States are not disgusted with the government of Qatar. The United States are not disgusted with the government of Egypt. But the United States are, for some reason, disgusted with the democratic government of Ukraine and with the president who has been democratically elected and recognized by the United States. This I completely fail to grasp. And the only reason for this is geopolitics. The United States want Ukraine to become a part of the Western sphere of influence. And that's the reason. That's why the United States are disgusted in the Ukrainian case and not disgusted with their allies, which conduct dictatorial policies.
Mr. Alexei Pushkov, thank you very much for joining us today on CNN.
Thank you.